giving you these 4 questions. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. If you'll notice, we're still using groups of, which means we're still multiplying. But now we're not just doing fractions, we're doing mixed numbers. And so the first question that you'll have to answer is, what is 3 1/2 groups of 6? And I'm sure that there are some of you who are able to answer that mentally. And what I'd like to do is figure out what strategy you used to do it. The distributive property, we set it up using a box so that we remember that the 6 is distributed and multiplied by both numbers, the 3 and the half. 3 times 6 is 18. 6 times 1/2, or half of 6, is 3. What is 2 1/4 groups of 8? Well, 2 groups of 8 is 16. 1/4 of 8. Maybe you can do that mentally, maybe you can't. So you can, because you're multiplying, set it up as a fraction. And simply 8 times 1 and 4 times 1. Or you might notice that you could simplify, divide them both by 4. So your answer is 2. 1/4 of 8 is 2. And well, 16 plus 2 is 18. So 8 groups of 2 1/4 is 18. And 2 1/4 groups of 8 is 18. Let's try 5 1/2 groups of 9. Well, 5 groups of 9 is 45, because 5 times 9 is 45. And now I'm looking at 9 groups of 1/2, or 9 times 1/2, or half of 9. Some of you can do that mentally. Others can remember the strategy you had for top times top and bottom times bottom. 9 halves. Now, in this case, it doesn't make sense to say 45 and 9 halves. So what we will do is turn this back into a mixed number and get 4 1/2. 45 plus 4 1/2 is 49 1/2. So what is 5 1/2 groups of 9? 49 1/2. And then it gets a little trickier. Perhaps if you still were able to figure out 2 1/2 groups of 2 1/2, you did something along the lines of this. You still used the distributive property. You still used the multiplication method. This box gives you 4, and half of 2 is 1. And this box, well, this is 2 times 1/2, which is 1. And this box is 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/4. So if you were able to solve it, 2 1/2 groups of 2 1/2, you would have gotten 6 1/4. Boys and girls, this is the same strategy we used for whole numbers when we were using the distributive property. It's also the same strategy we used when one of these was a variable. What you learn with whole numbers goes all the way through every type of number. Now, perhaps the distributive property is not always the best way to multiply mixed numbers. So I'm going to show you the exact same problems, but another way to do them. The way that we learned when we were multiplying fractions. Fractionize, simplify, and multiply. The reason I got out the cart and let you guys ride through the cart and be simplified is because I wanted you to remember that you have to be on the cart in order to be multiplied. And there wasn't any room for whole numbers on the cart. You simply were a numerator or a denominator. So fractionize means turn this into a numerator and a denominator, which means make it an improper fraction. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So I'm multiplying 7 halves times 6 over 1. I've turned this problem into a set of numerators and denominators. Now I'm looking for something that I can simplify. 1 and 3, because I divided both of those by 2. And 7 times 3 is 21, and 1 times 1, well, that's 1. And so the answer is 21, which is the same answer we got when we used the distributive property. 8 times 2 1/4. Fractionize. Instead of a whole number, write it as a fraction. Instead of a mixed number, write it as an improper fraction. Look for something that can be simplified, which in this case, 8/4 can be simplified. And remember, If this is still difficult for you, which for some students it is, you can rewrite the problem 8/4 times 9/1 and then see that this can be simplified to 2/1 times 9/1, which is 18/1 or 18. So you could do it like this, or you could rewrite it so it's easier for you to see. Fractionize, simplify, multiply. 9/1 times 11/2. There is nothing here to simplify, so I'm going to multiply 9 times 11 is 99, and 1 times 2, well, that's 2. And I can leave it like this because it's not a combination of a whole number and a fraction, but if I wanted to divide it, well, that would give me 49 1/2. 2 1/2 times 2 1/2. Fractionize, which means this is 2 times 2 plus 1 is 5/2 times 5/2, which is 5 times 5 is 25, and 2 times 2 is 4. And when I put that back into a mixed number, I get 6 1/4, which is what we ended up with on the other slide. So, here's some for us to work through. Follow the directions, even though this could be solved 2 different ways. For these, we're going to use the distributive property. And I would really like for you to try to do it without using the box. I'm going to draw the box because the box helps us remember so that we don't skip a step. So this would be 2 2/5 times 5/6. But simply writing it over here allows us to see if there's something we can simplify. And sometimes there is, and that makes it easier. So the problems that we're going to do are 2/1 times 5/6, and then we're going to do 5/6 times 2/5. And when we get those 2 answers, we're going to add them together. So looking at this set, I see the 2 and the 6, which I can divide both by 2. So this set equals 5/3. And then this set, these are both divided by 5, and this is 1, and this is 3. And so the answer is 1/3. And now I'm going to add 5/3 and 1/3 and get 6/3, which is 2. You've got a 4 and a 4/9, and you have to multiply both of them by 1/10. So this problem should look like 4 times 1/10 plus 1/10 times 4/9. And you 1/10 times 4, 1/10 times 4/9. Looking for something that I can simplify. I didn't fractionize that, and I can simplify here 4/10. So this would be 2 because I'm dividing them both by 2, and this would be 5. So 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 5 is 5. So whatever I get here, I have to add to 2/5. Again, I can simplify 2/5 to 40/5. Now, I do have to add these, which means I do have to remember my rules for adding fractions, which means I have to find a common denominator. And in this case, it could be 45. So instead of 2/5, we're going to multiply this by 9/9 and get 18/45 plus 2/45 equals 20/45. And this can be simplified again by dividing both of them by 5. 4/9 is my answer. 8 2/3 times 3/4. So that means I have to do 3/4 times 8, and then I have to add that to 3/4 times 2/3. So two multiplication problems added together. I'm looking for something I can simplify, and I see on this side the 4 and the 8. So my answer is 6 wholes. And I have to add that to what I can get over here, which these 3's can both be divided by 3, and this can be divided by 2, and this can be divided by 2. And so I'm looking at 1 times 1 and 2 times 1, which is 1 half. And so 6 plus 1 half, oh, well I don't have to find common denominators because I can do that mentally. 6 plus 1 half is 6 and 1 half. So, the distributive property practice, and now fractionize, simplify, multiply. Rewrite these as fractions. 9 times 7 is 63, plus 3 more is 66. So this is 66 sevenths times 5 elevenths times 14 fifteenths. Now I'm looking for anything that I can simplify. And remember, if you have some this big and you choose to rewrite the numerators in a different order or the denominators so that you can easily simplify them, you can. I'm simply going to use where we cross them out and write what we've divided by. But I see right here that I can divide 11 and 66 by 11. So this is going to become a 1 and this is going to become a 6. And then I see 7 and 14. Well, this could be a 1 and this could be a 2. And then I see 5 and 15. And so I have 1 and 3. And then if I wanted to, I could see here's a 3 and here's a 6. So this is a 1 and this is a 2. And if you notice, after all of the simplifying, the only thing I have left to multiply is 2 times 2, which is 4. And 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. And so my answer is 4. And hopefully you're being sold on the fact that simplifying first really does help, instead of just multiplying straight across the top and straight across the bottom. Let's try another one. 10 times 12 is 120, plus 5 is 125 twelfths, times 25 times 1 is 25, plus 23 is 48 25ths. And so I'm looking for something that I can simplify, and I see that 25, I know that quarters make $1.25, so this can be divided by 25, which is 1, and this can be divided by 25, which is 5. And then I see here a 12 and a 48, so this can be a 1 and this can be a 4. And now I've left myself with 5 times 4 and 1 times 1, and so my answer is 20. All right, one more. Fractionize, simplify, multiply. 12 and 1/5, well, that equals 61 fifths. 2 and 2 21s, 42, 43, 44 21s. And 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15 fourths. And now I'm looking for what I can simplify, and so I'm seeing, oh, well, here's a 5 and a 15. So I'm going to divide this by 5 and get 1, and divide this by 5 and get 3. And here's a 4 and a 44, 1 and 11. Well, here's a 3 and a 21, so I could do that. So I can divide this by 3 and get 1, and divide this by 3 and get 7. And so now I'm looking at 61 times 11 times 1, and 1 times 7 times 7. So 1 times 7 times 1 is 7, and 61 times 11, well, that is 610 plus 61 is 671, and 671 sevenths is an acceptable answer, or you can divide to turn it into a mixed number. So, let's see what you know. Push pause and try it yourself. Alright, hopefully when you were solving this, you remembered that area is length times width. And so I simply had to multiply 6.5 times 4 in order to get the area. Well, 6.5 times 4. If I use the distributive property, I could do 4 groups of 6 and 4 groups of 1/2. And so 4 times 6 is 24, and 4 times 1/2 is 2. And 24 plus 2 is 26. So this would be 26 inches squared. All right, let's look at this one. 8/15. I would fractionize it, 14 15/2. Simplify, 1, 1, 1, 4. The answer is 4. 3/7 times 1 and 5/9, 9 plus 5 is 14. So I'm doing 14/9 times 3/7. And simplify 1 and 3 and 1 and 2, and the answer is 2/3. All right, let's try this one. We had 3/8. We had 16/5. 27 plus 5 is 32/9. Looking for what I can simplify. I can divide both of these by 8, so this would be 1 and this would be 2. I could divide 3 and 9 both by 3, so this would be 1 and this would be 3. And then it looks like I am going to multiply 1 times 2 times 32, which is 64, and 1 times 5 times 3 is 15. 64/15 is an acceptable answer. If you put it in mixed number form, you would have gotten 4 3/4. All right, last one. 21/4 times 8/9 times 3/2. Looking for something to simplify. I can simplify 2 with a 2, and this becomes a 4. And then this could be 1, and this could be 3. And look, here's a 3 that I could then use to simplify the 21. So divide those both by 3.